just like all dogs go to heaven says, it's kept at a perfect 72 degrees. It's kind of, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
and so when you see those expressions of heaven, it's almost like the impression is this is a place that's less real than earth.
Just give us some little snippets, some little peeks into heaven. What is heaven like?
Yeah. Well, here's the book right here.
Yeah, what's the book like? There it is. What's the cover
Yeah,
like?
there
There
it
it
is. So the self-publisher that I worked with, they assigned me an illustrator, and Jose, he did a great job
He did.
with the illustrations. So,
Mhm.
well, in the book, I tackle two misconceptions that we have about heaven. First is that heaven is dreamlike, and we'll talk about that and what I mean by that. And second is that heaven will be boring.
Mm.
Those two, to me, rise to the top as misconceptions. So I touch on some scripture, but really the conversation that is had between the father and son while they're fishing, there's just kind of organic and fresh metaphors related to what they're doing. But I really talk about those two things. So why don't we start with that heaven is dreamlike?
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Dreamlike.
Yeah. So in the book, Jesse asks, "Is this what heaven is like?" And that's what kicks off the conversation. Well, they're in it's a cool morning. It's very foggy, hard to see. The lights just barely, those mornings where the lights peeking through the clouds, and it's almost unreal, like you're dreaming, where it's hard to see, cloudy, difficult to discern what's going
Yeah.
on. And if you look at the way that heaven is portrayed in artistic expressions, that's how it's portrayed. There's
Mhm.
clouds everywhere. There's this gold blocky city sitting on top of a cloud,
Mhm.
and everyone's floating, and
Right.
everyone's, just like all dogs go to heaven says, it's kept at a perfect 72 degrees. It's kind of, what is this? Like,
Yeah.
and so when you see those expressions of heaven, it's almost like the impression is this is a place that's less real than earth. I'm awake now. I'm aware of what's going on. Things are solid. But when I imagine heaven, it's like see-through and fuzzy and unclear. And
Mm.
that's how our art accidentally changes or influences our imaginations about heaven. So good Christians will say there's streets of gold, there's no more pain, there's no more suffering. We get a big mansion, even though that's better translated as room, but the word mansion lives on in our worship songs all over the place, which is a big pet peeve of mine. Uh, but it's we know all those things, but when we picture it, that's when we start to go wrong. You start to imagine your family members there and angels and this dreamlike state. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Hmm.
The reality is that heaven is more real and more solid than this life. So in the
Mm.
book, the dad suggests that when we get to heaven, we might very well, and I'm making speculations about some things, but I think they're inferences from scripture. We may very well remember our lives on earth as
Yeah.
if it were the dream. And
Mm.
when we get to heaven, that's when we are awake, right?
Mm.
So heaven in sort of the great divorce C.S. Lewis
Yeah.
tradition is more solid,
Mhm.
it's more real. uh it's like the Hebrew or the author of Hebrews says, where in heaven there's the true tabernacle, right? And on earth in the Old Testament, that was the shadow of things to come,
Right.
right? That wasn't the real tabernacle. The true tabernacle is in heaven. Well, you can almost extrapolate that and say, well, the true everything is in heaven.
Hmm.
So it will be a place where we get a new body.
Yeah.
We won't be spirits floating around. We'll get a new glorified body, just like Christ had his glorified body after the
And these
resurrection.
bodies probably couldn't even survive there, right? We'd have to have a glorified body to
Absolutely.
where it's more
Absolutely.
solid or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.